All right, welcome to the next Facebook Live Town Hall, coming to you live from the ACLU headquarters, where we are slowly moving from landscape to portrait mode. And now that we are now upright and not horizontal and zoomed out, you can welcome to the beginning of the legislative session. This will be our first week at the state capitol. So while there's a lot of pomp and circumstance going on the House and Senate floor, including a State of the State that's coming up just at the end of this week, as well as an inauguration of the first Jewish governor in the state of Colorado, the first governor, LGBT governor in the history of the United States of America. While we're making history that way, we'll also be making history through legislation, hopefully this year.
Yes, I hope so.
So we are joined today with Denise Maes from American Civil Liberties Union, the Colorado chapter. So say hi to our viewing audience, which I'm sure is growing by the second.
Hello, whoever's out there.
So last year, a little different than this year, right? Since the election has happened, we now know that Democrats have both control of the House and the Senate and the governor's office, which is a unique place to be. It's somewhere we haven't been since 2013. And so there were a lot of good bills that died last year. There were a lot of bad bills that also died last year. And so I wanted to start by just asking you, what are you most looking forward to with this next legislative session coming up in terms of some of the bills that you were really excited about last year, didn't quite get through to the finish line, but we're hopeful it'll make it across the finish line this year?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's, there is definitely a lot of excitement, about this upcoming legislative session, and I also am aware of the fact that leadership in both chambers is a little wary. Don't want to be the overreaching and all of that. But on the other hand, I'm confident that good policy will prevail. And so one of the areas that we're looking at that we focused on a little bit last session, but like you said, we weren't able to get across the finish line, is really pretty simple. It's how do we get people out of jails? Right now, there are over 10,000 people in county jails all over the state of Colorado that are innocent, meaning they are there pre-trial. And the only reason why they are in that jail is because they lack the ability to pay their way out. They cannot afford the toll. And so what we're looking to do is bail reform on one hand, and what we're thinking about is pretty much your low-level crimes will have a presumption of getting a personal recognizance bond, which means no cash bail. And what we know now from all of the data, and this is Colorado specific as well as all around the country, that money does not do anything to promote public safety, nor does it help people show up for their next court date, which has always been the traditional and historical reasons why we have cash bail. So that is going to be one big piece. There was a little bit of an effort last session to do that, but a fairly decent bill did not get out of the state Senate, so we're hoping that we can take that across the finish line. The other one, which I think is a little bit more basic, and I was really very, very surprised that it didn't get out last session because it had no organized opposition. It was the #1 priority for the sheriffs, and that is a simple text court reminder program.
Text message court reminder program.
Correct, and it'll just basically, when you have your next court date, you will get this message on your phone that says, hey, Representative Singer, just a reminder that you have a court date in the next 3 days at 10 a.m. Don't miss it.
That's just an example, people. I do not have a court date.
Right, exactly.
But if I did, I would love to get a text message, right?
And it's amazing how that helps so many more people actually remember, show up for the court. And why is that important? Is because if they don't show up for court, there is a failure to appear arrest warrant that goes out for that individual. That person is arrested and put into a county jail. And we already have, a lot of jails that are at or near capacity. And sheriffs want their jails to be for individuals that present a public safety risk. Somebody who simply fails to appear at a court hearing is not a public safety problem.
So your inability to keep a good calendar is not a good indicator whether or not you're a threat to the public.
Exactly.
Okay.
I like that.
So,
It's like that's the simplest terms. And it was like crazy last session that we couldn't pass it because, like I said, it had no organized opposition. It was, seemingly like a really, really simplistic sense, but it got assigned to state affairs in the Senate. And a lot of the senators, or 3 out of the 5 senators, they just had this issue with personal responsibility. People should just take it upon themselves. And I get that, but boy, we all take advantage of that reminder about, our dentist appointment or our hair salon appointment or whatever the case may be, right? So why not have one for your courts? For your court hearings.
I haven't gotten any reminders from hair salons recently, but
it's been a while.
It's been a while. I missed that text message.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Actually, I was getting text messages for somebody else's hair appointments recently, and I thought they were someone who was just making fun of me. But it turns out somebody did miss their appointment, so they were one number off. So Boulder County, I think, has been doing this for a while, either through phone call reminders or text message reminders, and you put it really well that we've got overcrowded jails already, and we want to be protecting the public, not enforcing personal responsibility of someone's ability to keep a calendar. That's a taxpayer subsidy, right? We are subsidizing enforcing people's irresponsible behavior, basically.
Right, exactly.
And when that irresponsible behavior includes things like driving drunk or being physically dangerous, that's
a
one
different
thing.
issue. Yes, exactly.
But this isn't what the case is these are folks that may be just needing to appear for a traffic ticket.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's all it is. It could be something as simple as that, and then all of a sudden, there's a warrant for their arrest, and there they are taking up the space in the jail where they shouldn't be in jail.
So so law enforcement is supportive of this. Did this have a bipartisan vote in the House last year?
It did not.
Okay.
It did not, and it was somewhat of a strange thing. It went to House Judiciary and it passed on a party line vote. Representative Wist at the time thought he would likely shift his vote. You know what, now that I'm thinking about it, no, actually he did vote in favor of it. He was the only Republican that voted in favor of it, now that I'm thinking about it. When it did get to the floor, he ultimately could see the benefit of it, and he was somewhat waiting to see how the state court administrator's office would come at the bill after it went through some amendments in the committee. So yes, it did get bipartisan support in the House, but then it went immediately to State Affairs in the Senate, which, as you know, is viewed as the kill committee, as it were.
Yeah.
There you go.
So are we looking forward to bipartisan support on that bill this year?
Yes, it's going to start in the Senate with Senators Cook and Senator Lee.
So a Republican and a Democrat, both who sit on the Judiciary Committee?
Exactly. And so we're hopeful. We haven't had an opportunity to talk to Senator Gardner yet about the bill, but he is the only one that we, maybe it'll be a 4-1. We're hoping it'll be a 5-0 out of the Senate. And as I mentioned earlier, that it's the #1 priority for the sheriffs, and Senator Cook is very much in tune to, for being a former sheriff himself, he really understands that, and he's definitely supportive of the bill.
So we've got a former sheriff, current Republican sitting senator, and ranking member of the Judiciary Committee carrying this bill. So I know you mentioned before that there was concern about talking about Democrats overreaching. I know the ACLU is nonpartisan, but
Correct.
From a partisan perspective, there's actually a desire for bipartisanship on both sides. You want to show people in Colorado like to see both sides of the aisle working together.
Yes.
And so this is one of those things where, unfortunately, we weren't able to cross the finish line. But we're going to do it this year. Are there other counties out there that are already doing this anyway, or other judicial districts that are already doing this?
Some are doing it in different ways. For example, Denver has a pilot where, they started out their pilot where they were sending postcard reminders, and now they're trying to roll out a text reminder piece, but it won't be to the entire docket. They're just taking kind of a subset of that. So Mesa County had one as well that they were doing reminder programs, but it varies on whether or not it's text, phone, or postcard. And what this, what we have found is in different jurisdictions in the country, that text reminder is the absolute best. It turns out, which I guess, like, for example, younger people, they don't always check their voicemail messages, and so text reminders are better. I mean, this is kind of weird for me. I don't understand that philosophy, but that's kind of what happens. And so it seems like text reminder is the absolute way to reach most anybody.
Well, easily cheaper than messenger pigeon as well.
Exactly.
So cost to house someone in jail for just one day in Colorado is what now?
It can range anywhere between $55 and $70 a day for that.
$55 and $70 a day. Cost to text message a person to remind them of the court date.
A heck of a lot less.
Probably somewhere between 1 and 10 cents.
Yeah.
Per text message, probably. So in these places, what's sort of the prediction then of those people that get those text messages? How much more likely is somebody to show up? Is it 10%, 20%,
No, it's
50%?
a huge percentage. When we looked at the pilot program in Mesa County, and we're going to get some data from the Denver one, but you have probably maybe a 20-25% no show still. But that's a huge uptick in appearance rates. So it's super effective.
So we can see some big cost savings. I mean, let's forget the sort of civil liberties element of this person just missed an appointment and now they're going to jail. But the other component of this is going to save the taxpayers some serious dollars too.
Yeah. It'll save the counties. I mean, again, it was the county association will support it. They supported it last session. They'll be on board. There is a possibility, for example, that the program can be built out to include even municipal courts at some date in the future, so that would even help municipal courts get involved. So like the municipal league would probably be interested in it if they had a way to plug into it. So there's a lot of really big pluses about it. And on the bipartisan piece, I should also mention that in the House, it'll be Representative Benavides, Democrat, and Representative Carver, Republican, out of the Colorado Springs area.
So for those folks in the viewing audience who don't know this, actually, and we're joined again by Denise Maes from ACLU today, is that in both chambers, both the House and in the Senate, you're able to have up to 2 co-prime sponsors, as many co-sponsors as you want, but in terms of your main sponsors, you're allowed to have up to 2. It's going to be both a Democrat and a Republican in both the House and the Senate. And so this is about as bicameral, bipartisan as possible as we can go. So this is pretty exciting.
And I wanted to mention that, or maybe emphasize that you're exactly right, that the ACLU is nonpartisan, and anything that we've ever done at the legislature over the last few sessions, regardless of its makeup, has always been bipartisan, and we want to continue in that fashion. So I think a lot of the pieces of legislation that we will be championing or supporting or advocating as priority bills will be those that have bipartisan support.
Any 1 or 2 other bills that didn't make it across the finish line that you're hopeful about this year that you're ready to share?
Yes, and this one is a little bit more complicated. That it was sort of a little bit of another one that we thought would get support, but it was hard, I think, for folks, and it's basically a transparency bill. It is to make available the internal affairs bureau files of law enforcement agencies once the investigation is complete, to make those subject to the Open Records Act. And the fact is they really are now subject to the Open Records Act, but what happens across the board, except for 2 jurisdictions now, is that law enforcement will decline that open records request on the basis that it violates the public interest. And so what we tried to do with House Bill 1406 last session was to tighten up that exception so that it really wasn't, kind of the big hole in the open records request that it tends to be. Denver, incidentally, responds to those open record requests now, and it hasn't had any effect on their ability to continue with investigations, or they have seen no negative effects whatsoever to the fact that Denver continues to provide those records. And they do it simply because, to be frank, we sued them many times, and they now are in full compliance.
Do they remember to show up in court, or do they need a text message to show up in court?
Right. We get to give them a text message like it's time for you to respond to the open records request.
Right.
That kind of thing. And then Aurora has since been the subject of a couple of lawsuits, not from us but from other lawyers. And now Aurora is producing more and more of those files. And again, to no bad effect. And there are quite a few states, both red states and blue states, that do this. And over the last year, we have seen even more law enforcement agencies agree to turn over these files after the investigation is complete. And the sky is still high. It is not fallen. And so we think that this really should be a no-brainer, but the amount of law enforcement opposition to this bill was rather excessive last session, that it was a tough go. We did have bipartisan support in the Senate. It was Senator Lundberg and Senator Moreno that were carrying the bill in the Senate, but we still couldn't get it out of Senate State Affairs.
Gotcha. So, well, I guess I've only got 2 questions on this one, and then we should see what else we should take a look at. But has law enforcement, have they changed their tune at all this year, or has there been some new breakthrough or compromise, or is there going to be still this sort of back and forth between them?
I worry that there's still going to be serious opposition to it. It's another bill with bipartisan support in the House. We have Representative Coleman and Representative Williams, and I think they will continue to run the bill. And we had several meetings with law enforcement last session, and we did change the bill a little bit to try to reach their needs, but at the end of the day, they simply don't want any legislation on this issue whatsoever.
Okay, well, this is
So
going to be a longer conversation then. And
yes.
Hopefully, next time we'll bring on somebody from Fraternal Order of Police. A lot of them are my constituents, and so we can.
Happy to have the conversation.
I think it actually might up our viewership too. So
there you go. Happy.
You hear the counterpoint on that one.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that, Bill. We'll do maybe one more from last year that didn't make it across the finish line. If not, we can jump on to some other things.
No, I think those are the big ones.
Okay, that's big enough.
Yeah.
So juvenile detention and what's going on with our juvenile facilities right now. I know that was a really big issue last year. There have been some major changes in our Division of Youth Services. Used to be the Division of Youth Corrections.
Correct.
Are we headed in the right direction, or are there things we could be looking forward to this year?
Yeah, we are headed in the right direction. One of the things, as you may recall, was in the 2017 session, Representative Lee carried a bill to sponsor a pilot program out of Missouri Youth Services, and it would be at Lookout Mountain here in Colorado in the metro area. And that pilot has taken off, and it's doing incredibly well.
Wow.
The question mark, or I guess I should say in our conversations with DYS, is they want to extend the pilot for another year. They really think just doing a year was not, just needed more time to train more staff. And so we're hoping that Representative Lee, Senator Lee, will bring back the bill to extend that pilot for yet another year. We have done some tours out there, and it's really kind of amazing what some paint on some walls and some nice, comfortable furniture can do to even the atmosphere in there.
So let's rewind for the viewing audience, because we know what we're talking about, but a lot of other folks may not. So let's start with what a juvenile offender is. So there's some sort of offense that they've committed that will be analogous probably to a crime, whether it's an assault or something, but because they're under the age of 18, somewhere between the ages of 10 and 21,
right?
They have been basically remanded into state custody, but not to a jail, but to something called DYS, used to be DYC, Division of Youth Services, but these detention facilities still kind of look like jails.
Exactly.
And so maybe we could start there, but what this Missouri model is saying, let's put this more into almost a college dormitory.
I was going to say a dorm. That's exactly right.
And so, say a little bit more about that.
That's really it. I mean, it's intended to, create more peer-to-peer interaction, even more interaction with staff and kids, so that it's not you know, a real correctional type of facility, so that's kind of the whole purpose. And what they try to do with this pilot program is train staff to be more collaborative, different type of working with these kids than the kind of the strict disciplinarian. And it apparently works really well. Anywhere that this Missouri pilot program has gone has seen incredible results, lower recidivism rates, just better success rate of kids getting out and, you know, becoming really productive members of their community. And so we brought this pilot program here, and the idea is that the pilot program would bring in staff from all over DYS so that they could see how this program could work in their own facility. And that's why Senator Lee, and actually DYS reached out to Senator Lee for him to extend the pilot program so that they could train more staff and open more facilities like that all over the state of Colorado.
So that's pretty exciting. So I know that probably the two questions in my mind, you know, being a former caseworker,
Yeah.
You know, I didn't spend a whole lot of time in those correctional detention facilities, but you know, the concern, you know, for somebody like me who's not necessarily trained in how to, you know, personally defend myself, you're walking into a place where kids have done some violent things, right?
Absolutely.
Your frontal lobe is not the same as what it is as when you're past the age of 21. So maybe the planning part of your brain's not there. But that, once again, it's kind of scary for an adult to walk into that situation knowing that someone's already has this proclivity. So, you know, is staff on, or youth on staff violence going down in these places? Youth on youth violence going down? That's basically what we're starting to see is less violence, but in an environment that looks more like a dorm than a jail. And so there's obviously training that goes with it too. It's not just a fresh coat of paint.
Right, exactly. And I'm glad that you highlighted the violence within the facility, whether it's staff on youth or youth on youth. And what we have seen is in the Missouri pilot, and what we're seeing at Lookout Mountain where it is being held, is that violence is either staying the same or going down. And I totally get, one of the things that we were very empathetic about and could really listen was that staff is afraid, and I understand that. I mean, your description, you know, you just don't know what's going to happen, and there, of course, are going to be very, you know, terrible incidents, and they have happened, and they're not the result of a pilot program or anything, but there are these situations, and they're going to happen. And what I think that staff is now learning, or trying to learn, that putting a kid in solitary confinement for an inordinate number of time is not the answer, and can only actually perpetuate the problem.
Make it worse.
Exactly.
Right.
And so I think that they're learning that or certain pain techniques are not the answer. And so that's really part of what this model and training is trying to really create in that environment, is that these are not the right responses, and that they actually don't keep anybody safe.
Right, and the rap, for those people who don't know, I'm not even making a joke about this because it's just that serious, but the rap, for those people who don't know what it is, do you want to explain what that is and why that isn't happening anymore?
Yeah, this is something that we were able to catch on video through an open records request, but it's basically putting a kid in a full body wrap, where a kid is in this unit and just completely wrapped with a kind of a little helmet with just the ability to breathe.
It's almost a straitjacket with almost a Hannibal Lecter mask.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly. And that was one of the ways that staff had been trained in the past to deal with out of control youth, and that causes serious trauma. We had a young kid who came to testify in favor of the bill, who had been subjected to the rap, and it was very heartfelt. I mean, you could tell that it had really affected him, and it was going on way too often. And so, looking to the help of the legislators, DYS finally decided to put a complete end to that, so it's prohibited completely.
Well, and on the flip side, I know we talked about staff concerns, but at the same time, we're talking about 10, 11, 12-year-olds. There's a situation, this is decades ago now, but one of my interns used to work at one of the correction facilities, and this young child under the age of 15 had killed a man who had been abusive to his mom, and this is a 10, 11, 12-year-old who the staff were scrambling to look for a teddy bear for this child, right? And they're this kid's being put in a facility where, yes, they were violent to someone to the worst degree possible. At the same point in time,
it's like a weird
Are they
thing,
better
right?
off that, and we got to remember that at the same time that they do these horrible things that we align with adults, that at the same time that these are kids.
Exactly.
And these are kids that, there's a kid who wants this teddy bear. And that
that description is crazy, right?
It's heartbreaking.
So true. Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And so we've got, we're getting better though. We're on the right path.
Yes, I think we are. And I think ultimately, I don't even think, experts at DYS would say that we want more of these facilities. I think everybody agrees that we want fewer of them, or we really would rather have these kids, most particularly the real nonviolent ones, to be in their home and have all the wraparound services they need, whether counseling in the right sort of school, et cetera, et cetera. And we're not there yet, but having facilities that aren't quite your jail-like facilities is certainly a step in the right direction.
So competency. Can we jump to competency?
Please.
So for those of us, once again, we're using all these legal terms that hopefully none of you will ever have to deal with in your life. But we have a situation right now where there are people who are incompetent to proceed for trial. They have committed crimes, some serious, some at the level of stealing a candy bar,
Exactly.
quite literally. And basically we have a situation right now where our mental hospitals, our state mental hospitals, are filled to the brims with people who are waiting to be restored to be able to be competent to stand trial. Now, competent to stand trial, if you're seeing any expert to be restored to the ability to stand trial, is not the same as being restored to be able to function in society necessarily.
Correct.
So
Correct.
you've got to know basically the difference between right and wrong, what a defense attorney is, what a district attorney is,
Right.
sort of a basic understanding of what your rights are, but you still may not be, psychologically or emotionally stable to do other things.
Correct.
So I at least artfully, if not accurately, describe what competency restoration is?
Yeah, and the importance of that, like how it differs from, insanity, for example, or like you said, mentally unstable, or whatever things are in between, right? Competency is just like you said, and we have a very, very serious glut, if you will, of individuals that are waiting just to have competency restored. And I think I saw recently some news now that really what the state is thinking of is limiting the mental health hospital here in Colorado to just dealing with individuals that are in the criminal justice system. So what does that mean for individuals that are not in the criminal justice system, and how are we going to deal with them is a huge question mark. And it would just be awful if we only have state hospitals for individuals that are in the criminal justice system and leave everybody else outside.
So it's almost like, and for the viewing audience out there, if there are people who are struggling with mental health issues, don't think that you can't call a crisis services hotline number right now. You can call our crisis services, Colorado Crisis Services hotline. You can Google Colorado Crisis Services. We'll put it in the comments section. There are people that are out there helping. You can walk into any of our crisis centers statewide and get some assistance. But when it comes time to being essentially needing inpatient treatment at a state hospital, not a private hospital, not a private nonprofit, but at a state hospital, basically we're filled right now with people who are just waiting to be restored to competency.
Right, for purposes of standing trial.
Right, and so once again, back to your bail reform thing, these are people that haven't been found guilty.
Correct.
That are not necessarily being held in jail.
Correct.
But are being held.
Yes.
They are in a hospital, waiting to be restored to be able to be competent to stand trial.
Correct.
Some of them longer, some of them as long as the sentence would have lasted.
Exactly.
So we're talking years.
Yes.
In some circumstances.
Yes.
So if there were three solutions off the top of your head on this one, I mean one that has been suggested is if the anticipated date of restoration to competency is longer than the time served if you were found guilty. These people haven't even stood trial.
Right.
That maybe we don't hold those folks for 2 and 3 years for stealing candy bars.
Exactly.
And we're going to need to change some laws around that.
Right.
I don't know if there are other solutions out there. That's one, but I don't know what
No, that's
other
really
thoughts are.
that's really the only one that we're focused on right now is that one. I know that there are other, folks out there that are probably more involved in this that are trying to figure out other solutions, but I think that solution that you just mentioned should be done regardless of other solutions. So,
Absolutely.
for example, if in fact there is support for allocating more beds, that is not to say that have beds and they will come, but it should be that we get rid of those lower level individuals who have already served their time regardless. So we could have a lot of solutions that work together with letting those people go.
All right, so let's jump one more thing. Immigration.
Yes.
So we know there was a recent El Paso County case. I don't know if you follow it. El Paso County, Colorado case.
It's our case.
Okay, so you've been following it very closely, maybe sending out more text messages to about the court appearances.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about what's happening in El Paso County, where we're at today, and what, either through the judicial system or the legislative system or through what our expectations are with the sheriffs and the executive branch are. What's going on and what can we do?
Sure, no, that's great. So there has been this thing out there in immigration land, and it's called a detainer. And what that is it's an administrative form that ICE fills out and sends to the county sheriff and asks the sheriff, will you please hold this person past the time that you would otherwise release them, because they may be subject to deportation and we want to go and pick them up. And starting in 2013, well, before 2013, that was a common practice among all county sheriffs, was in fact to honor those detainers and say, yeah, ICE will hold these people for you beyond the time when they otherwise would be subject to release. Starting in 2013, we sent out letters to all the 64 county sheriffs and said, this practice is in violation of Colorado law, stop it. And so we did file a lawsuit in Arapahoe County on this issue. And before the case really got up and started, Arapahoe County conceded. They paid damages to the woman that they held beyond her release date. And then similarly, we saw all the other county sheriffs acknowledge and agree that we were correct, that these detainers were in violation of Colorado law, and so they were no longer honoring them. Fast forward to the Trump administration, and we saw two counties, both Teller and El Paso County, start to honor detainers. And so we filed lawsuits against both counties, El Paso and Teller, and we have prevailed in El Paso County. The district court there, a Republican governor appointee, I think, I'm trying to think who was the appointing governor, but anyhow, the judge entirely agreed that, in fact, this was an unlawful practice under Colorado law. They have appealed to the Court of Appeals, and so we're awaiting that process to go forward, and so that we're hoping that it'll be held clearly in the appellate court arena, because I'm sure even if the Court of Appeals goes our way, which we're confident that it will, they will appeal to the Supreme Court of Colorado and hopefully the same result, so that these detainers will be no longer lawful. But that process might take a while, so what we're hoping is that the legislature will pass legislation that makes it abundantly clear that detainers are not lawful under Colorado law. And just real brief, I'll be real quick on this, is the reason why it's unlawful under Colorado law is by Colorado law, sheriffs are only allowed to make an arrest, i.e. detain someone. Either they have a judicial warrant, one, or they have probable cause that the individual has committed a crime. Mm-hmm. And being here in violation of the immigration laws is not a crime. It is a civil offense. So there is no probable cause to hold someone beyond the time that they would have been otherwise released.
So are there examples of counties out there that are not enforcing these detainers then and have been more proactive and trying to make our immigrant neighbors feel like neighbors as opposed to criminals?
Yeah, I think I think the two that I'll highlight are Denver and Boulder, that have really looked at kind of making it a welcoming place and honestly to make it a safe place. We all know and we've all heard the statements that when you have local law enforcement enforcing immigration laws, that the communities feel less safe. You have victims that don't talk about being a victim of a crime. You have witnesses who, are eyewitness to a crime that don't report it. Lots of reasons why local law enforcement should not be doing the job of federal immigration.
Right. Well, and I wasn't fishing for compliments for Boulder County. I'm glad you did put us on the other side. But one of the things I dealt with when I was a caseworker was, you were in these families where one person was a citizen, one person wasn't, and if there was domestic violence going on, even though it's illegal to use somebody's immigration status against them, sort of in an extortion way, right? That people were afraid to come forward, and you would have a person terrorizing their entire family and basically being able to dangle this over their head, saying, "I'm going to keep doing this to you, and if you come forward, ICE is going to come get you."
Exactly.
And we're going to use the sheriff to get ICE to come get you. And so the more that message gets out into our community to understand that they can come forward and report these crimes, it protects the public. It protects kids. It doesn't just protect immigrants, but it protects our entire citizenry.
Exactly.
So,
it's a public safety issue for everyone.
So, we'll be looking forward to seeing where that lawsuit goes. In our waiting minutes here, I was waiting to see, and I wasn't able to pull this up on the phone here, but our silent but thoughtful partner Brian has been watching the comment section. Any questions in the comments section? We'll leave the comments section open for about 24 hours or so. So Denise, if you want to respond to anything, we'll tag you on that. But anything coming up?
Yeah, so one person has a question about, can we stop using evictions as like a life sentence? I assume for housing or parking for the handicapped. There's also another interesting question, will the ACLU challenge Nordberg Moreno, which, do you know which case that is? It's the Israeli boycott bill from a couple years ago.
From 2016?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you can pick whichever one you want, or do both. So.
Well, I'll do that one, because I'm not so sure that I know the other ones. There's probably more in your wheelhouse. But in 2016, there was legislation that was passed that precludes PARA from investing in companies that support the BDS movement, which is the boycott, divestiture, sanctions, which is the group in protest of Israeli occupation in Palestine. So, or the West Bank and the Gaza. But anyway, that was a bill that we challenged quite vigorously on First Amendment grounds, and we still do believe that legislation was not in compliance with the First Amendment. But it's interesting. I received a couple of emails about that today. I'm not really sure why. And then this question, I'm sort of curious. I know, right? I'm kind of curious why, given that this bill was passed in 2016 and we fought it hard. But I mean, honestly, when the bill was introduced, probably 2/3 of the legislative body was already listed as sponsors.
I was one of the 5 no votes or 6 no votes on that bill.
There were very, very few no votes, and so it was. But I'm curious why all of a sudden it has come up, because this is now be the 3rd today that I've received a question about it. We're certainly going to look at it again. We, it was really at the time when it passed, we fought it in the legislature. We thought we'd see how it turned out. We did an open records request and found out that there weren't at the time any companies that were involved in the BDS movement that were part of the PARA investment anyway. So we kind of let it go, but I don't know if that is still the case.
And frankly, I found double negatives are really confusing for me.
I know, it was hard to explain.
It was basically sanctioning companies that sanction countries.
Correct.
So sanctioning sanctioners.
Yeah, exactly.
Which just didn't make sense to me, and so I know it's a heavily loaded issue, being someone who is Jewish and having major Jewish Israeli organizations supporting the bill. It brought a whole new layer to something in state government where I think most of our work should be within the purview of the state, not international politics and policy.
Right.
But I understand that politics is what it is. So it's about 12:30 right now. In terms of the eviction, I think that there's going to be a lot of conversation this year about what ban the box means, whether it's in employment that's saying, we've had bills in the past that have said you have the right to apply for a job and only just prior to a job offer, would an employer be able to use your criminal history as a way to either hire or not hire you. But at the very least, you deserve the ability to apply for a job and interview for the job, and then let people meet you where you're at and see who you are today, not what your criminal history says you are. And same thing with eviction notices. I know that has been brought up in the past as well. I think the only sort of nexus here, and I know Denver is looking at this right now, and I know other communities are looking at this, is
On the housing side?
On the housing side, is
Yeah.
providing counsel, attorney counsel for people facing eviction, because what we've seen is almost 90% of the cases where evictions are levied against someone, the eviction goes through, but those numbers precipitously drop off if somebody's able to retain counsel, which means to me that there's probably some sort of eviction going on that isn't following the law.
Right, exactly.
And so you're branding people as, unhousable,
Right.
illegally. And so I don't know if the ACLU is playing a role in any of those movements, but something
we are watching. I think it was introduced on Friday. It's House Bill 1025, which is ban the box, and that is the employment piece where you can't ask a person's criminal record until they get to the final stages of their interview.
So anyway, we'll try and answer those questions a little bit better, not off the fly, but online, and we'll be looking forward to additional record sealing bills additionally this
There's
year.
going to be a bunch of those, I understand.
To basically say, look, once you've paid your debt to society, you've paid your debt to society, especially if you're a nonviolent offender, and there's no indication that you're going to. There's every indication that you're going to be an everyday tax-paying citizen. And so we'll be looking for those bills as well. Any concluding thoughts or comments?
No, I just say stay tuned and let's hope for good things.
If there's a website that you want to give out for people so they know how to stay in touch with you, email, whatever, what's the best way for you to?
You bet, it's ACLU-co.org. And on our website, we have a legislative pull-down menu, and then that's where you can keep track of all the bills that we're tracking. And we always invite your input.
ACLU-co.org. I can't think of anything that rhymes with that, but hopefully the mnemonic device will stick in. Thanks for having me over to your place again, and so let's keep those conversations going throughout the session and see where we're at.
I love it. Let's do it.
Thanks.